Hey monsters! Thanks for tuning in to Murder Murder News, the true crime cult for the latest breaking news, murdery memes, TV reviews, podcast recommendations, and all things spooky. We really want to get to know you, and what better icebreaker is there than a little chat about serial killers while chasing around baby goats at our very own cult. I'm television's Aurora Katie.
And I'm Angelina. Cults are no fun alone, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell all of your true crime friends. This is the Week in True Crime.
Murder, murder, news.
In March of 1985, church deacon Harold Swain and his wife Thelma were gunned down in the vestibule of their predominantly black church in Camden County, Georgia. A strange pair of glasses with a few hairs stuck in one of its hinges was found at the scene of the crime, believed to have been left behind by the killer. But at the time of the initial investigation, DNA profiling wasn't commonly included in forensic investigations. The following year, Emily Head identified the glasses as belonging to her ex-husband, Eric Sparre. She and another of Eric's ex-wives both described him as a violent racist. Emily's family shared a tape that they claimed held Eric's confession to the murder, along with racial slurs and violent threats. Eric Sparre was arrested and later released when a phone call to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation from someone claiming to be Eric's boss was accepted as an alibi. The case went cold for over a decade and was even featured on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries before it was reopened in 1998 with a new focus on Dennis Perry as a suspect. Jane Beaver, a woman whose daughter used to date Perry, gave testimony that he had committed the murder because Harold Swain laughed in his face when he asked him for money. Dennis Perry was convicted in 2003, and the Georgia Innocence Project has been fighting for justice for him ever since his conviction. They found some unsettling information. Jane Beaver was paid $12,000 for her testimony, unbeknownst to the judge and jury at the time. Earlier this year, criminal justice reporter Joshua Sharp of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution was inspired to revisit Eric Sparre's alibi after scrutiny on Perry's conviction was expressed by both the Georgia Innocence Project and the Undisclosed podcast. It turns out that whoever vouched for Sparre back in the 80s wasn't his boss. He didn't even get the boss's name right. Sharp talked to Sparre's actual employer at the time, who said he had no memory of talking to the police about this or providing an alibi. In May, the GBI once again reopened the investigation on this 35-year-old double murder case. 79-year-old Gladys Sparre provided the Georgia Innocence Project with a DNA hair sample that matched the hairs in the glasses found at the scene of the crime to her son Eric Sparre. As a result, Superior Court Judge Stephen Scarlett ordered another trial for Dennis Perry on July 17th. In light of the falsified alibi of Eric Sparre, the paid testimony of Jane Beaver, and the new DNA evidence, it seems Perry has spent 2 decades behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. Just 2 days after the judge ordered a new trial, Gladys Sparre was found dead in her home in Waynesville, Georgia. The chief medical examiner, Wyatt Blount, said that when he arrived, members of the GBI were already present, and the body was taken away before he had a chance to examine it. Gladys Sparre's death is still under investigation by the GBI, who haven't yet ruled out or confirmed any foul play. But the timing of her death is incredibly suspect, as her son's freedom is finally threatened after 35 years. Eric Sparre has not yet been arrested.
We need your help in finding missing 10-year-old Breasia Terrell. Breasia has been missing from Davenport, Iowa since July 10th, and the FBI has now offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to her return, and there's a $3,500 reward being offered by the Quad Cities Crime Stoppers. Here's what we know about Breasia's disappearance. She went to stay with her 8-year-old brother at his father's apartment in the 2700 block of East 53rd Street in Davenport. Her brother's father, Henry Earl Dinkins, lived with his girlfriend, and her mother, Aisha Langford, said she had no reason to worry anything would happen. Aisha last heard from Breasia at 9 p.m. on July 9th when she texted her from Henry's phone saying, "Good night, Mama, I love you." Aww. The next morning, when Aisha was off work, she received a phone call from Henry telling her Breasia was missing. Being that she was a 10-year-old girl, Aisha first thought this was a bad joke because there's no way she would wander off into the night. Her mother reported her missing on the 10th, yet an Amber Alert was not issued for her disappearance for 5 days. 5 days. We know how precious the hours are immediately after disappearance, especially for a child.
Wow.
Yet an alert was not issued for 5 days. Police searched Henry's house and arrested him with a second offense for a sex offender registration violation and a probation violation. Police have classified him as a person of interest in the case, but he has not been arrested and charged with a crime related to Breasia's disappearance. Henry previously pleaded guilty to third-degree sexual assault in 1990 involving a girl who was 13 years or younger, and now probation violation after officers searched his home looking for Bresia on July 10th. Aisha had stated that she was unaware that Henry was a sex offender and that he had been around Bresia since she was a baby, so she had no reason to believe she was unsafe in his care. It is believed that Henry has valuable information that will lead to Breasia's return, and if you have any information about his whereabouts from 10 p.m. on July 9th through noon on July 10th, please contact the FBI at the website below. In addition, police are seeking information about the vehicles associated with Henry during this time, including a maroon 2007 Chevy Impala, a black 2012 Chevy Camaro, and a motorhome. We have posted our sources below, so please share these articles on your social media so we can hopefully get Bresia home safely soon.
This week, we're watching Dirty John, Betty on USA. The second season of Dirty John covers the real-life story of Betty Broderick, who murdered her ex-husband and his new wife in 1989 in La Jolla, California. The show stars Amanda Peet as Betty Broderick and Christian Slater as Dan Broderick, and explores their marriage and very ugly divorce from the perspective of Betty. The show does a great job highlighting the impact of verbal and mental abuse and how gaslighting can cause someone to question their value. We highly recommend checking it out.
We are so excited to have Claire Isabella with us from this week's favorite YouTube, Claire Isabella. Claire started her true crime YouTube with the intent of honoring victims and making sure they're not forgotten. Claire, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show. I love your show so much. We're so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot.
So what inspired you to start your YouTube?
So I've been watching true crime YouTube for a really long time, probably since the first true crime YouTube videos with Kendall Ray. And so, I've pretty much gone through all the channels and all the videos that there are, and I've seen pretty much every case. And so I decided that for other people like me who have seen pretty much every video, I wanted to just give more content and give more exposure to, certain cases that I've never seen talked about, because unfortunately there's a lot of cases that I've never seen talked about. And so I thought if I made my channel, then I could kind of highlight, those unknown cases.
That's great. And what is your true crime origin? What got you into it originally?
So I started out as pretty much a very young kid. I was in elementary school, and my parents have always been interested in true crime. So we would watch like Dateline or 48 Hours pretty much every Friday night or every Saturday night that it was on. And so I got into true crime very quickly, and it just kind of spiraled from there. I started watching documentaries and different TV shows, and that slowly turned into, when like the internet became more accessible. As I got older, you didn't just have like a big desktop computer at your house. Like when I got my first laptop, I discovered like online communities like, Web Sleuths or other communities dedicated to missing people. And I just became hooked. I don't know why, but it was just really interesting to me. And I've just always really felt like empathy towards those people. And so it just was really easy for me to get absorbed in the cases, and I would just spend like hours, researching it. And, I realized as I got older, like there are podcasts out here, there are communities, for people who are interested in this stuff. And I just slowly got more and more into the community, and, here I am today.
Right. Well, one of the things I love about your YouTube, and you mentioned also that you love unsolved cases, I feel like sometimes in the true crime community, there are a lot of people say that they need resolution, that they're not so into unsolved crimes. it's an absolute favorite of mine. Like I love the mystery of it. I love disappearances. I think it's so great. Do you have, out of the cases you've covered, or maybe not even one you've covered yet but you'd like to cover, do you have a favorite disappearance or an unsolved case?
Wow. That's a very good question. I'm with you on that. I love unsolved cases. Those are like the most interesting to me. So if I had to pick one, I mean, there are a lot, but the first case that really got me into unsolved cases was the case of Gladys Sparre. I remember like hearing about it because I'm from kind of the area in the Midwest, and I remember hearing about her disappearance when I was pretty young. And I didn't really think about it until I got older and started getting more into the true crime community. And I did some research and I was just instantly hooked. She just reminds me a lot of myself for some reason. Like, you know, she did a lot of volunteer stuff and the stuff she was interested in fashion. And she just reminds me a lot of myself, like I said. And so I just kind of related to that case really early on. And, you know, especially with all the details being so blurry in that case, it just has sucked me in, and I spend probably the most time on that case looking stuff up to this day.
Do you have any theories on what happens? Like, what's your best theory to date?
Oh, wow. I have a lot of theories that could potentially be it, but my main theory is that something happened to her and there was a cover-up. That's, you know, just allegedly just my theory. I don't want anyone to come for me, but yeah, I think that something did happen to her. I think she's unfortunately no longer alive, sadly, but I think the people who were with her that night know something about what happened to her, and they had a part in it. Now, how big of a part, I don't know, but I do think that there was involvement. Otherwise, if they had no involvement, why wouldn't they just, you know, tell the police what happened? So that's kind of my thinking. I think a lot of people, you know, are along the same lines, but, you know, it could be anything. It could be like a random serial killer in the area. You never know, so.
Yeah, and you never do know with these cases. Like the Israel Keys situation was really eye-opening for me, because one of his fetishes, which I find to be incredibly creepy, is that he really loved disappearances, and he would spend a lot of his time looking up missing people, and I think that's part of why he would kill people, is because he wanted to then go home and look up what the media was saying about them missing. And so sometimes when people say like maybe like a missing person could have been killed by a serial killer, it seems kind of far-fetched, but then when you think there are people out there like him, it does seem more plausible.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, and thinking, you know, just speaking about Israel Keys, you never know how many people he could have killed, you know, that he didn't confess to. There could be, you know, all these cases that we've talked about that maybe he's connected to, and we just don't know it to this day. So, you know, that keeps me up at night, like thinking about, you know, those kinds of things. Like, is there a serial killer connected to all these cases? You never know.
Yeah, and he's just such a creep.
Yes.
Well, Claire, Claire, it's been so nice having you here today. Can you let our viewers know where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, so they can find me on YouTube at Claire Isabella, and they can also find me on Instagram and on Twitter under Claire Isabella, but the I is an L, just like a lowercase l. So, yep.
Great, and don't forget to subscribe to Claire Isabella on YouTube so you don't miss a single episode.
We are excited to announce our next book selection for our August book club, American Predator: The Hunt for the Most Meticulous Serial Killer of the 21st Century by Maureen Callahan. American Predator uncovers the true story behind how the FBI ultimately caught Israel Keys and tries to understand what it means for a killer like Keys to exist, a killer who left a path of monstrous, randomly committed crimes in his wake, many of which remain unsolved to this day. We will discuss the book all month long at MurderMurder.news and also host a Zoom book club chat on August 30th. So pour yourself a glass of wine and get ready for our online book club. The invite is linked in the details below.
I just started it yesterday and it's very good. I cannot wait to discuss it with y'all.
Yay! We love reading your comments, so long as you aren't an incel troll. Thanks to Fiona Gallagher for mentioning that she initially thought the shooting at the judge's house was related to Epstein, but she wasn't aware of the shooter's anti-feminist agenda.
Thanks to Kayleen for commenting on our video about what it's like to date a true crime enthusiast. She said she hadn't heard the term murderina before, and she can relate to sleeping with weapons by her bed as well.
Thanks so much for tuning into This Week in True Crime with Murder Murder News. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button below, give us a thumbs up, and tell all of your true crime friends.
If you just can't get enough true crime, join our commune at murdermurder.news for our Monster Book Club and Cold Case Solving groups. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. See you next week.